Welcome to the January 2015 edition of Financial Empowerment, a production of the California Society of CPAs and CalCPA Institute. I'm Bill Spaniel. College costs continue to rise, but parents and students can find ways to pay for higher education without being encumbered by too much debt. We talked over Skype with Larry Pond, a Redwood City CPA, PFS, about student loans, scholarships, grants, and how to keep college costs under control. Hello, Larry. Welcome to Financial Empowerment.
Hi, Bill.
Larry, I'd like to talk to you about student loans and how to pay for college. It's very expensive for many people to go to college nowadays. And obviously a lot of people, a lot of students borrow through student loans. But before I get into that, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that students and parents can do before they even consider applying for student loans to reduce potential expenses?
Well, Bill, it depends on what stage of life we're talking about. Are we talking a newborn, a preschooler, elementary school, junior high, or high schooler? So the answer is going to depend on what stage they're in. Now, the advantage, if you're younger, you have more time to save for college. And that's the best way to pay for college, is to save for college, especially through a 529 plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we can ask grandparents, friends, and relatives to also contribute to that plan. If done correctly, about a third of your college education will be paid for by tax-free growth in the 529 plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great when you have younger students going to college. However, that gets a little more challenging when it's someone that's in high school, especially when they're a senior.
Right.
And they've saved nothing for college. And that's going to be a lot more difficult. However, the way I look at it is we want to make student loans the last thing we look at. We should look at other sources of funding.
Such as?
Scholarships, grants, other ways of paying for college before we get to the student loans. Almost every college has a very robust financial aid page.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are colleges you're interested in, and I recommend looking at all of them, take a look at their financial aid page, because a lot of colleges want you to go there and they want you to be able to pay for college. And so they'll have various scholarships. It could be a lot of schools have what's called a President's Scholarship. It could be alumni scholarships, which would be outside the university. Of course, there's the federal grants, the state grants. It also depends on the university. If it's a public university, you take a look at what kind of state aid is available if it's a public university.
Now, you mentioned scholarships and grants, but there's a difference between the two. What exactly is that?
Right. So there's two kinds of grants that you would get. They could be need-based or non-need-based. So the need-based will be based upon your financial ability to pay for college. And the non-need based is irregardless. It could be based on merit, could be special talents, or winning a contest, winning a speech contest, an essay contest. Some scholarships are art contests. So there are things you can do to get money for college.
Mm-hmm.
If you're musically inclined, there are contests you can participate in music.
Obviously, not necessarily obviously, but many people can go through like their parents' company. Sometimes I believe parents' companies offer scholarships to employee children, and there also, as you point out, there might be specialized scholarships for endowed by musicians or even a family with a particular last name. I believe there are things like that. But what I'm asking you is that scholarships and grants are two different types of funding, right? And there is a major difference between the two, and I'd like you to talk about that major difference between what a scholarship requires a student to do compared to what a grant might require a student to do.
Okay, a scholarship is generally privately funded. In general, it's generally funded by private individuals or a company or an organization or civic groups or whatever, and they usually have certain criteria. Locally in my area here, we have an award that's for community service, and so the student will apply for a scholarship and talk about their community service, and then every year this organization grants about 50 scholarships to various students for what they've done in the area. So scholarships are generally merit based. Grants could be need based. A lot of grants are need based, or it could be an underrepresented group of a college. They would like to get more people into that group, from that group into the college, and some of them are federal grants, like the Pell grants. In California, we have the what do they call it? The Cal grants, right? And then the various grants related to that. The two resources are really worth looking at is the federal financial aid website. You type in your computer student aid on the web. That takes you to the Department of Education website. And that shows you all the types of financial aid there is, starting with grants, scholarships, and loans. All the various types of loans are available. And they even have a search engine for scholarships. So click on that.
Well, sticking with scholarships and grants, what if you have one or the other and you are in college but you drop out?
Right.
Do you have a financial obligation to pay back either one of those?
Good question. And that depends on the specific scholarship or grant. Some are annual, so if you're there for the full year and you make it through the year, you don't need to pay it back. Some expect you to graduate, and if you don't fulfill your obligation, you are obligated to pay back. So it depends on the scholarships, and it depends on the reason why you dropped out too. Sometimes it could be beyond your control.
Well, let's go to student loans, which, as you explained, should be probably the last resort, because what are some of the options for student loans? How do you go about getting one, and what are some of the requirements for getting a student loan?
Right. Well, the starting point for any financial aid is to complete the free financial aid for FAFSA form, and that's going on around January, February timeframe of every year, and that's the starting point of all financial aid generally. And then there's another form, the CSS form for the private universities. So that's the starting point. And what that information does is that it helps figure out what the student's financial need is going to be. Financial need is fulfilled through various categories. It could be fulfilled through scholarships, grants, work study, and loans. And then there's different types of loans. Some loans are offered by the university. Some loans are federal loans, if you qualify for subsidized loans. And then there's unsubsidized loans, which would, of course, cost more. And then there's parent loans. So there's a lot of those are the fall in the category of student loans. Now, some parents use their home equity to pay for college too.
Right.
And we have to be careful about using home equity because in general, not all of it may be deductible. So be careful about that.
Okay. Well, what are the interest rates that one can get on a student loan, and how does that affect the payment of a student loan?
Right. So when you're in school, you have what's called deferment. And what deferment means is the loan is deferred. It doesn't mean it's not due. It just means you don't have to make a payment while you're still a student. So upon graduation, after a certain amount of time after graduation, you're expected to make payments on your student loan. Now, the interest rate's going to vary depending on the type of loan you're getting. And there's a pretty wide range in the loans depending on which loan program you're working with. Sometimes the universities can offer some very low-cost loans. It might even be less expensive than a subsidized loan. But it'll vary. You have to read the fine print, and these numbers change almost every day. So you have to read the fine print very carefully.
Read the fine print and shop around, so to speak, right?
Exactly. And also, while you're doing that, if you do have to use student loans to pay for your education, the first thing you got to be careful about is borrow only what you need. A mistake a lot of people make is they borrow as much as they can because they can, and then when they graduate, they find out they owe a lot of money. And so, it should just be used for the cost of tuition, the cost of books, and those kind of things. I don't recommend using student loans for living expenses or for buying a car or for things outside of education needs, because you don't want to be burdened with this very large loan when you graduate.
Right. Well, ideally, when you graduate, you get a job. And unfortunately, many graduates don't get jobs in this economy, or if they do get a job, it's not quite what they were looking for originally. It may be at a lower salary than what they anticipate. So how does that factor in paying off their debt? What can they do to minimize the impact of that student loan on their income and on their livelihood in the years ahead?
Right. So one thing you should never do is to ignore the student loan provider. You should never ignore them. If you don't pay, or if you fall behind in payments, don't ignore them, because that's not a good thing to do. You should contact them, call them, let them know your circumstance, telling them that you can't find a job for whatever reason, or you need some more time, or ask for an extension of deferment. And they can work with you.
Mm-hmm.
It will not work with you if you get turned over to collections and then you're stuck with a very mean collections person, and they're not going to give you any breaks. So that's very important. The other important thing to look at is, okay, what kind of loan payoff programs are there? There are certain occupations that will pay off your student loans, and it's worth looking at. For example, there was in California, they have the healthcare fellowship program, which if you agree to work in the healthcare field, because there's a shortage of healthcare workers, if you work in this program, they will make payments towards your student loan for you, and a tax-free basis. So that's a pretty good deal. If you work in underserved areas, there are programs that will pay off your student loans, especially in the medical field, or especially if you're in the medical field in the military. This can be pretty lucrative.
Good.
It's worth looking at.
Anything else you would like to discuss regarding student loans or financing one's college education that you think would be helpful to listeners to our program?
Well, I think what's important is when you're investigating the schools you're looking at, do some planning, take a look at what the total cost of college is going to be. The financial aid offices in every university and every college is very helpful, because they want you to succeed. They want you to be a generous alumni. So they're going to want you there, but so you need to compare the different schools you're looking at and what kind of career opportunities you can get out of there, and the ability to pay off these student loans. So you want to plan to see what kind of resources you have personally, how much can you make working towards your college education, what are you going to do during the summers, what are you going to do during school, do you qualify for work study, and trying to minimize the amount of student loans. What's going to be important is to figure out what the loans are going to be by the time you graduate. Is it going to be a six-figure number? Is it going to be a five-figure number? How big is that going to be? And what are the payments going to be? And how's that going to relate to what your life goals are going to be? You don't want to be 50 years old and still paying student loans. You hope to have that paid off by then, because you have other financial goals you've got to work towards.
Right.
So I think what's more important is to figure out what we can do to keep the cost of college as low as possible. A good example is attending your local community college for the first 2 years to get your general education out of the way. And again, working with the college that you do have a pathway to that four-year university you want to attend. Or some people I know have started at a public university and then they transfer to a private university in their year. That's saving some money. So there are a lot of strategies you can take to keep the cost of college down.
Okay.
Larry spoke of the FAFSA application. That's the free application for federal student aid. Schools use that application to determine student eligibility for aid. You can fill out the application online at https://fafsa.ed.gov. We appreciate your listening to Cal CPA's Financial Empowerment Program, which was produced in January 2015. If you would like to comment about our show, have a question for a CPA, or would like to suggest topics for future programs, write us at financialempowerment@calcpa.org, or simply visit www.calcpa.org. You can search there for a California CPA who can help you save on taxes, better manage your investments, or a budget for those rainy days even sunny California sometimes has, just click on the Find a CPA link. This is Bill Spaniel, and you've been listening to edition 171 of Financial Empowerment, a production of the California Society of CPAs and Cal CPA Institute.